not we run, skip with the flow, feeling the rhythm, the bounce, jamani, wacha kulala, changamka kiasi, haya basi, up and away we go, from the bottom we rise, look at the light in our eyes, see it, believe it, I see no lies, fast, no.
Um, Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Expressor session. So my name is Mutugi, but you can call me Tugi. I am a user experience researcher, or you can call me a user advocate at Marathon XP. And I am super excited to talk about a topic that really excites me and a topic that's very close to my heart. And that's the incredible value that companies can unlock by embracing UX research. So to start off, I'd like to give a definition of what UX research is. And I'll start with a question. I don't know how many of you can remember the popular series Prison Break. So the popular series Prison Break. So Prison Break was a series about a guy called Michael Scofield. So Michael Scofield was actually trying to strategize how to break out of prison. And to do this, Michael Scofield had to, study the prison layout, had to talk to fellow inmates. And in the world of UX research, the user researcher is the strategist who plans and executes research to, break out of this complex user experience challenges, if I might call them that. And how exactly do you do that? You do that by, number one, being able to gather information. And how do you gather information? By talking to users. You do that by conducting surveys, or we can actually say conducting any research methods that you find fit to what you're trying to investigate. You do that by analyzing the data to be able to, plan improvements in your product or your service. So also another way you do it is to, just immerse yourself into the world of the user. Actually, now that I remember, in the popular series Prison Break, Michael Scofield had to, intentionally or purposefully get himself in jail because his brother was convicted he was actually sentenced to death because of a crime he did not commit. So in the world of UX research, we call this immersion, because he had to be there to be able to, break him out of prison. So this is where immersion is where maybe a UX researcher, immerses themselves into the world of the user, and they're able to observe, behavior, or indulge in as users indulge in a product or a service, or actually as they use it, so that they're able to see how they're using it. So an example of this, where I know immersion happens a lot, is in game UX research. So game UX research is where user researchers immerse themselves in the world of gamers to observe, behavior. If you think about it, games, assuming you're playing FIFA, or assuming you're a UX researcher who is part of the company that developed FIFA, you have to be there to, watch how people are playing. You have to ensure that users don't experience a lot of difficulty that they give up playing. And also you have to ensure that it's also not too easy, that they're able to finish playing the game altogether, earlier than or faster than they should, just to get them hooked. So another example maybe I can use to describe what UX research is about is, let's say a company has a complex e-commerce checkout process. So what they do is they look for a UX researcher who would be tasked to be able to make it a bit smoother. So how do you do this? You do this by interviewing users. You do this by, trying to understand their struggles. You do this by trying to figure out what they like. And, you do this by, after you do all this, now you're able to see what exactly could be simplified about the checkout process. So after doing the research with the two examples I've been able to give, and after you've gathered all this strategic information, you're then able to share these insights that will then create a seamless process to keep your users happy in whatever product or service that you're trying to investigate. So to do this, I want to use some of the persistent myths that have been holding UX research back for quite a while now. And what I'll do is I'll be taking you through some of the misconceptions or some of the mini quotes that we get from stakeholders, some of the pushbacks we get from our colleagues at work. And to start with, I'll go with this is a very common quote actually, and it says we don't have enough time to do research. So most of the time, the genesis of this quote is usually around when you're handling projects that have a very tight timeline. And I mean, we've all been there. The longer project takes, the more expensive it becomes. So people have the notion that if you introduce research into it, then we're probably wasting time. But that's very wrong. Also, most of the companies that actually say this are companies that lack a research culture. And if there is no culture, then how exactly can you get time to conduct the research? Because I mean now what that basically means is that research is nowhere in the company vocabulary. And I mean what does this lead to eventually? What does not having time to do research lead to? So this leads to user frustration. Users get frustrated while using your product, while using your service, because there are touch points that they feel could have been done different, or there are touch points that they feel a lot of friction and they are not able to get assistance or something like that. So to be able to give more context into this, I have a personal experience that I'd say that's the peak frustration I've ever had while interacting with a service. So it was a while back, I think it was last year, November. So I remember it was an afternoon, I was just driving from home. I just left home. And 3 minutes into my drive, I get a message notification from a popular bank within the country that my ATM card had, been used to make a payment of $40. And this payment was done to the popular website called Tinder, the dating site called Tinder. You can imagine the shock upon seeing that. So what do? You immediately stop. I mean, I immediately stopped, quickly tried to check which card, because I have a couple of cards, check which bank exactly had been, deducted. And I mean, just by looking at that and identifying that bank, I could tell this is probably a card. I knew it was a card that I had either lost or misplaced. We've all been there where you're probably not sure if you've lost something or you've actually misplaced it. So, I mean, what do? I immediately call customer care to try and block the card. So what happens? I'm put on hold to be connected to an available agent for about 40 minutes. And guys, here I'm thinking this guy is probably trying to look for other subscriptions that he could pay for, or even try and buy something for himself, probably buy a nice TV or something like that. So I was really afraid of what was about to happen. So I'm there, the 40th minute, now I'm getting really agitated. So I thought of, let me just quickly go back to my email, because one of the bank staff had actually sent me a bank statement. I at least try and get a contact from the sign of the email. And that's exactly what I did. And luckily, when I called the contact, the number, that lady picked and she was able to ask. But now the question in my mind after that was, what if she didn't pick up? What if she didn't pick up and blocked my card? And I mean, it was a bit late in the evening. I think it's the period between when the bank is closed and when they have to do their the balancing that happens with the bank. But I mean, at least she was able to assist because she felt that it was an emergency. And again, this bank had no self-deactivation features on the card, for the card on either their app or their online banking. And also every time I made a payment using that card, I would, especially when I'm doing online payments, I would usually get a code that is sent to my phone so that I validate it. But you see, this time it didn't happen. So because of that, I definitely went to the bank, had to complain. They actually say they don't understand how comes I didn't get the prompt to be able to authorize that payment. And they said they're going to follow up and they were going to try and see how they can resolve it by refunding. Guys, to this date, that has never happened. So you can imagine how that experience was altogether. Oh yeah, and I probably missed this part. I probably had to also call my wife to tell her that my card was used to pay for Tinder. You don't want to get in trouble when your phone is seen with a message from Tinder. So yeah, that's a point that I was very frustrated. And I think I would also another scenario where users were really frustrated, and it's something that really trended a lot at the time was when Microsoft had just launched their Windows 8. So what happened? They had tried to introduce like a tile-based, touch-centric interface, and the worst part was they removed the menu button where it was, the start menu where it was, and they shifted it to somewhere else. So what this meant was that there was a steep learning curve after it was launched, because then users are already used to doing things in a certain way. And then you move this thing and you probably haven't tested it out. So anytime you do this, it means that there's it's called a high learnability curve. So a steep learning curve, sorry. So what this means is users have to, get accustomed to the new ways of interacting with your product. And when you do this, it means there is low learnability of your product. Low learnability means that the time that it takes for users to accomplish a task is going to increase. It also means that the task completion rate is definitely going to go way lower, because then they don't even know where to start. I mean, it's a start button. So in response to this feedback, Microsoft definitely had to do something about it. They launched Windows 8.1. And after launching Windows 8.1, they reintroduced the start button and made several user interfaces improvements. But then again, they had to go an extra mile to launch the Windows 10. And at least on the Windows 10, they were able to bring back the start menu where it was supposed to be, you know? And I mean, from these two examples, as we continue talking about user frustration, what are we seeing? The bank that I had the negative experience with definitely neglected user research, because what you do, if by any chance it had talked to their users, just having that culture of continuous communication with the users to try and understand how their experiences are, they would have probably picked up that their contact center had a couple of issues. They would have probably picked up that maybe there are certain times that you need users would like to have the power to be able to do things on themselves by themselves. So like being able to deactivate a card, I should have been able to do that quickly, maybe on a mobile device or something like that. Also, when you look at Microsoft, what are we seeing? So Microsoft dropped the Windows 8 without doing the usability testing, which was quite a rookie mistake, because after you introduce such a big change, it's good to put it in front of users and just see how exactly are they interacting with it. Do they understand it the way you thought they would, And then, I mean, this shows that research doesn't really take time, because, I mean, you can imagine the amount of rework that they had to do, because all these guys had to definitely go back and try and make these improvements, especially Microsoft. They had to like quickly, and probably even earlier than they had expected, bring in the 8.1, the Windows 8.1, and bring in the Windows 10. Yeah. So to bring this point home, I want to share with you a couple of, facts and that have been done, research that has been done by other companies. So this is a study that was done by Nielsen and Norman Group. And what they had done is they had put people in a lab trying to test and see what are the number, what is the right number to be able to uncover, certain issues when it comes to digital interfaces and services and stuff. So what you see is testing with just 5 users can uncover a remarkable 85% of usability problems, you see. So anyone who says they don't have time to do research, I mean, it only takes 5 users to be able to uncover most of the issues that you have. You can imagine if Microsoft actually did this. And for user interviews, start with about 6 to 8 participants and analyze the interviews as you go. So the reason why we have the analyze the interviews as you go is because then you're able to start seeing the recurring themes. You're able to see that at this point I can actually stop and work and try and generate insights from what I'm seeing here and try make change from what I'm seeing already. Or better yet, sometimes it could even get to a point you're like, okay, now I probably need to stretch this a little and talk to a couple more people. I mean, this is also very dependent on the different customer segments you have, because if you have like 5 or you have probably like 2 different segments, you could try and have a representative sample in each, so really it doesn't take time. So to continue, so yeah, so another study by PwC shows that a single bad user experience can have a substantial impact on customer loyalty and retention. And actually 32% of customers would cease doing business with a brand just after one negative experience. Yeah, for sure, because what happened to me with the bank example that I've given, I definitely had to change banks, because this is money we are talking about here. So what I did is I went and opened another account to a competing, bank. And actually, even I think I'm just unlucky with banks. So even this new bank, I had a similar experience, but at least not on Tinder this time. I had pressed a phishing link. I think they call them phishing links, and my account was at risk. And I remember I called them 1 minute, someone had already picked up within that minute all my, anyhow I accept. I mean, every channel I used to access money was blocked. That's the USSD, the ATMs, the PIN, the app, the online banking, all these were blocked. Yeah. So to continue with this, the second quote or the second misconception that we always hear about is we don't have the budget for a research project. I mean, this is very common. We hear this quite a lot. And most of the time when you hear this from companies, it basically speaks to, again, the fact that there's no, strong research culture in this company or within this project team. It also talks about how they view UX as an additional expense rather than an investment, not knowing that or probably even overlooking the long-term consequences of neglecting UX research, and what does this do? What normally comes up when, people give this excuse? What normally happens is there is usually an increase in the development cost of the products that we are building. And to be able to give an example of this, a while back, I think it was in 2012, um, Apple had developed the Apple Maps. Yeah, so the idea for Apple was to, replace the Google Maps from their iOS devices. We all know how Apple loves to, create an ecosystem of all their apps all together. So doing this meant that they had to do extensive development, for this app to work. They had to do a lot of data collection. They have to do a lot of map creation. They actually had to acquire, a lot of mapping data from various sources, and this was a very costly venture. And I mean, also at the end of the day, they struggled with data accuracy. They struggled with, coverage, because it was really rushed, because they were trying to compete with, Google Maps. And after launching this, it had several consequences. There was very negative reception amongst their user base. Why? Because there are so many inaccuracies. Users were already accustomed to using Google Maps, and it was working just fine. People had issues with their navigation. And Apple has built a brand whereby, or has built a reputation for delivering very high quality products. But this Apple Maps development, put them at a very bad place in terms of public relations. So what happened is many iOS device users definitely had to revert back to Google Maps, or these other third-party mapping solutions. And that was really bad. You can imagine the amount of money that they had put in to try and churn this product quickly. And what do we think Apple could have done different? Apple could have probably started by trying to understand what are the current user experiences when it comes to using the Google Maps and these other third-party platforms that were having that had the map services, and how would they have done this best by doing research? by doing research, they would have probably understood the pain points. They would have probably understood, what users valued. They would have probably understood how users navigated the maps. They would have probably even looked at the different use cases, because you see maps has different use cases. There are guys who are walking, there are guys who are driving. So they probably understand how different people using this app that we're developing. They would have probably also tried to understand the auditory and the optical needs, because you see, like I personally, I can't listen to Google Maps when driving. I have to see. So there could be someone else who's very good at hearing within the next turn left in the next 200 meters. But you see, they would have been able to understand and cater for all these all these users. You see, and probably if Apple had done user testing before releasing the app, they would have probably uncovered most of these issues. Yeah. So another example that I would want to give for this is it's a very popular article. It's called the $300 million button change. Yes, that's $300 million button change. So what happened here was, this is actually a case study by Jared Spoll. So there were only two buttons. So we had the login and we had the register. Well, definitely we had the email, the password, the login, and the register. So what the company noticed is there was a very high drop-off rate when users got to that screen, and the company had to hire a usability researcher or a UX researcher to try and investigate what exactly could be causing that. And upon starting the research process, the first red flag that Jared Spoll and the team noticed was that the screen showed up right after the users clicked checkout. What this meant was that users had to actually add items to their cart, and as soon as they made their way to the checkout, then this screen came with the email, the password, the login, the register. First-time users were annoyed because what this meant is they had to register to be able to complete their purchase. Actually, from the article, one of the users said something interesting, and she said that I am not here to get into a relationship with this company. I just want to buy something, and that's very key. That's something that speaks into users wanting to do things faster and just getting onto something else immediately. So also repeat customers were quite annoyed because most of them couldn't remember their password. Either they couldn't remember their password or couldn't even remember the email they used to set up while on this e-commerce store. Actually, they had about 160,000 daily entries of people requesting for their passwords again. So you can imagine how bad that was. So what they did during the tests, they requested their participants to come with shopping lists. And what they did is they gave them money to make the purchases. And all they needed to do was just complete the whole process all the way to checkout. And the improvement they made was really simple. They removed the register button and put the continuous guest, and after they did that, they actually even had to add like a reassuring copy just to let the customers know, and it read, don't have an account, no problem. You can check out as guests. You have the option of creating an account during checkout. So underline the word option, because then it means it's not mandatory. You can still check out and go on with your day, but if you like, you can actually create an account during checkout. And what result did this have? This company, this e-commerce store, made $15 million within the first month. It also made $300 million within the first year of making that change. So if anyone ever tells you that UX research is not UX, that they don't have a budget for UX research, just tell them about this case study and they'll be able to see, the importance of, investing in it. So from the two examples that we've seen, that is Apple and the e-commerce store, we've noticed that these companies had to go back and try and understand their users better, So what this means is that it had to spend more money, This means that they had missed market opportunities. And how? Because you see, if your competitors had invested in user research initially, then it means that they've already gained a competitive advantage over you. Also, they probably also experienced a lot of poor reviews. You guys know how when Apple does or releases a product that is not as people probably expected it to be, there is usually a public outcry. It goes all the way to, it goes to Twitter, it goes to YouTube. People start doing videos and stuff. So that's a negative brand image, and customers actually chant. Customers actually leave, and what happens is most customers, when they leave after a positive experience, they probably don't come back. Chances of them coming back is very low. Also, this causes time delays, having to go back, because now going back means you're going back to make the corrections, right? And you have now to start planning for a post-launch, a launch now that has happened, it's like you're launching twice, because now you made mistakes, you have to go back and come back and change them. And you have to like market and tell users that now we have made this improvement and stuff. So it becomes too much. So let's look at some facts about return on investment. So Marie Karat is a former UX researcher at IBM, and she came up with a very interesting rule, and that is the 1:10:100 rule. So what it basically says is it will cost you $1 to do research initially, $10 to change your design, and $100 to change your product. So where would you rather be? I personally would rather be at the $1, whereby I start with research. That is not expensive over time. Also, another research company, Forrester Research, did a study, and they realized that for every dollar invested in UX, you can expect a return of $100. That's an outstanding 9,900% on return on investment. And I mean, I just actually watched a video about Jeff Bezos where he was talking about how they invested 100 times more on customer experience than in marketing during their first year of launching Amazon. And that just speaks into the importance of knowing your customers. So the other benefit of doing research really is, to reduce the product development cycles. So we all know that, when a product takes long in development, it becomes expensive over time, right? So if research can help by reducing this, then how comes reducing this cost? Then how comes research again? Research cannot be expensive. You can't avoid doing it. So Interaction Design Foundation actually did a study, and they talked about how organizations that prioritize UX during the early stages of a project can reduce a product development cycle by an impressive 33 to 50%. That's quite interesting. Also, we all hear about products that have been released and products that have to go back and be reworked on, and products take long it becomes just a headache. We've talked about a couple of examples right now, and the Massachusetts Innovation and Technology Exchange did a study, and they realized that UX research has the potential to save a staggering 50% of development rework time. How? By ensuring that the development team has a clear roadmap from the onset, reducing the need for costly revisions down the line. Yeah. So this is why whenever you hear someone again talking about how we don't have the budget to spend on a research project, just tell them that eventually it's going to pay off. Yeah. So to continue with our third quote, which says that it's not worth it. So most companies that talk about or mention this, or people, individuals, they truly don't understand the detrimental effects that, not being familiar with how your, users experience your product or services can be. And what generally happens is when it's not worth it, you start seeing lots of negative reviews on, various reviewing platforms, and, just users being generally very unhappy. And I actually have an incident that I found myself in this situation. So today I'm going to share so many examples so that we're able to, understand the value of this UX research that we're talking about. So it was a couple of years back. I think it was about 3 years back. I had signed up on on an internet service provider, an ISP. And at first, it was very exciting to onboard. The service was affordable and all. But after a couple of months, I started encountering challenges. So some of these challenges included fluctuations of networks. Actually, remember we had network outages for up to 3 days, you know. And guys, when you're used to having Wi-Fi in your home, 3 days three days is a lot. Is a long time. It feels like forever. So what did I do? Definitely, like everybody else, I resorted to calling customer care again. Calls sometimes are not going through, or if they go through, they'll actually inform you that someone is going to get back to you in a couple of minutes, a couple of hours. But no one did. You can imagine if the network outage is during a weekend and you have guests over. So what do? You have to buy bundles, you have to tether your phone, and every time someone calls you, if you're using your phone to play music, maybe on YouTube, your guest will just be there seated waiting for you to finish talking over the phone so that you can come back and they continue listening or enjoying to their music. So uh, I got agitated. These guys are not helping. What did I do? I went to Google reviews to write a review, hoping that it would actually be bait to have them call me and tell me, hey, so we've seen this. Because I at the time I had it's faster to get assistance when you go complain on social media than actually calling directly. So that's what I did. And to my surprise, I noticed that there were several other reviews from customers complaining about the same thing, you know. And what I felt about the brand was, if they had maybe built a research culture on the onset, they'd have probably interacted with several existing customers, and they'd have understood that there are certain hiccups that our customers are facing, and we probably need to work on them and see how exactly we can make this whole experience a lot more frictionless. So to continue, we are going to look at some more, facts or data. And this is a study that was done by PwC. And what he talked about was that 91% of unsatisfied customers don't voice their complaints. They simply vanish, leaving without offering any feedback. You know, at least I was part of the 9% that gave feedback, but you get what this means. 32% of all customers would cease doing business with a brand after just one negative experience. Guys, this is this is so this should be so eye-opening. I mean, we should be quite concerned about how users just interact with the things that we develop, and the things that we actually develop, hoping to make their lives better or be able to solve their problems. And I mean, users have evolving needs. If you think about it, where you are now is not where you are 5 years ago. Probably anyone listening to this, probably the internet bundle you used 5 years ago is not the same internet bundle that you use now. Your needs have evolved over time. So if companies are able to continuously, have engagement with their users, they're able to see that these needs are changing, and internally they're able to accommodate this change so that they keep these customers happy and they retain them even more. Because if they do this, then the brand image is good, because users generally look for social proof from other people before jumping on or before trying to use something, either trying to experience a service or trying to experience a product. We've all been in a situation where probably you're traveling. I know I have. I usually try and look at the Google, I look at the TripAdvisor reviews, I look at Booking.com reviews. And if you've looked at them recently, you start noticing that they've actually tried to start segmenting how they classify the reviews. So there are reviews that talk about the location of the hotel, there are reviews that talk about the cleanliness of the hotel, there are reviews that talk about the staff, and they're able to pick this up and put it there because they understand that human beings really make decisions upon trying upon verifying what if other people have actually made the same decisions, you know. And I mean, being able to address issues before they escalate will definitely, you know, prevent this reputational damage. Yeah. So just to give an example actually of this is there's a flight company that really tarnished their brand image. This is not an example within the tech industry. It's called United Airlines. So what United Airlines did some time back, a man was forcefully removed from a flight because apparently one of the United crew members was flying to the same destination and hadn't gotten a seat. I know it's very outrageous. So they actually sent security to this person and they tried to forcefully remove him from his seat. But you can actually look for the video, you'll see it. So it's the United Airlines. I think if you put United Airlines drama or reputational damage, you'll be able to see it. So on the video, you can see guys by even hitting him, you know, to, getting him off his seat, dragging him down the aisle, and on the video you can actually hear people screaming and saying that this is not right. Why are you doing this and stuff? And I mean, there were several consequences for this. There was a public outcry. You know, it was a trending topic. There were boycotts. So people started pushing a hashtag saying that they boycott using this airline. You can imagine what that did to their stock price. You know, it definitely had to drop. You see, and it definitely tarnished their reputation to a whole new level. I mean, as usual, they definitely had to issue apologies, try and change their policies, compensating the affected passengers on that flight. But you see, all this could have been avoidable, right? And what do we learn from these examples? It's companies must prioritize customer experience through continuous research, right? So being able to respond also to negative feedback to mitigate the impact of such incidents in their business. And actually, United Airlines actually was able to pick up because they really tried to clean their name, and I supposedly think that it worked. Because again, I mean, in the age of social media, negative reviews and public sentiments can spread very quickly. So it's very important to address them before they escalate. And finally, the last quote that we are going to look at today, that is quite common as well, is that we already know our users well. We don't need to do research. This is, I probably hear this every few weeks, from people just I interact from friends, and it's actually crazy. And most companies or people that say this, I mean, uh, they believe that the past success that they've had probably in their product actually it brings a lot of complacency, that the past success they've had guarantees future success, and what it does is they usually believe in the intuition, which sometimes or most times is not 100% correct. And this can have, a lot of effects, detrimental effects. Yeah. So what does this lead to? The assumption that you know your users. This leads to closed doors. Yeah. So I actually have an example of a company that closed doors. It had just come into the Kenyan market. I think they stayed for about 3 years and they had to shut down. So what the company mainly dealt with was home improvements and building material products, So then the target market for them were, contractors who were in the large scale construction industry. And also they were very keen to try and attract the do-it-yourself, the DIY consumers. But little did they know that, the Kenya is largely populated by small hardware shops, and manufacturers are selling direct. Big manufacturers are actually selling directly to the construction companies and the individuals, Also, Kenyans are not entirely big when it comes to the DIY model, and Kenyans have a contact for a plumber. I know I do. You have a contact for a plumber, you have a contact for an electrician, you have a contact for a carpenter, maybe your table broke or something around the house, you just call them and they come and fix and you pay them. That's the culture. That's the culture that has been around, you know. So it really comes down to, you know, localizing your offering and, you know, trying to connect with the consumer. And this showed that there is a great need for companies to actually pay attention to consumer and household behavior. And what better way to do this than actually leveraging user research? I mean, also with a mix of a little of behavioral science and behavioral economics. Yeah. So another popular company or another example that actually had to shut doors was a company called Blockbuster. Yeah. So Blockbuster was a big rental game. It was actually a game and movie rental company in the US. So they had thousands of stores worldwide, and they I think to bring it back home, it's remember the cassettes, those cassettes that well, I'm about to give a sneak peek into my age, but those cassettes that we used to go and hire, and then you probably, I remember I watched Gods Must Be Crazy, and it was the other movie. Yeah, I think Gods Must Be Crazy. So you'd go hire that cassette, you're given on a Friday, and then you'd be told to bring it on a Monday. If you don't bring it back on a Monday, there's a fine depending on the number of days that you extended with. So it was around that. So it was around the same model, but different. So this one was American. So the challenge that they faced was, you know, popular streaming services like Netflix and Hulu, they started to change the way, you know, people consumed content. So Blockbuster was very slow when it came to, you know, when it came to adopting or when it came to shifting in the consumer behavior, but when it came to, you know, into bringing a shift in the consumer behavior. So instead of investing in research to truly understand the changing behavior, customer behavior and the preferences, Blockbuster decided to, you know, stick to their old ways of doing things or the brick and mortar ways of doing things. And eventually Blockbuster actually tried to launch their online platform, but it didn't work. Again, as I mentioned previously, companies that, you know, start with research usually have a competitive advantage over you because they gain a lot of mileage in the market. So by the time Blockbuster had to, you know, build their own platform, it was almost becoming too late. And their attempts to compete with Netflix, I mean, it definitely had to fall short. So what Netflix actually did was Netflix tried to understand the current, you know, the existing customer experience. And how did they do this? They had to, you know, because what you, if you look at it keenly, you'll see they entered an existing business model, but they just had to tweak a part of it. You know, there are those friction points that they were able to identify. And for me, I would want to say the friction point there for me, if I remember, being sent back on that Monday to return that cassette, I was just like, what? I have to actually go and take it back. But I think I didn't know anything better. So it wasn't as annoying as it would be right now that we have Netflix. So they were able to identify those user friction points and they were able to address those issues. And that is having to physically pick and return the videotapes. And now you can actually watch all these services from the comfort of your screen, from the comfort of your laptop. Actually, not just one movie, but up to hundreds of movies, you see? So from these two examples, what went wrong? That's the home improvement company and Blockbuster. It's very, very simple. They actually thought they knew their users. Yeah. And there's a quote I really love by Jared Spoll, and it says that there's a technical name for the absence of user research, and it's guessing. Guesswork, guesswork, guesswork. That's the technical name for companies that talk about, hey, we don't need to do research. Then, okay, we are about to go down the road of guesswork. So the next time someone comes and asks you, hey, why should we do research? Just tell them you don't want to be part of the, you know, highly technical practice of guessing, you know, because that truly won't help. So let's look at some facts. So this is a study by Nielsen and Norman Group again, and it talks about the success rate. There is a success rate of 80% when people build products according to most user mentor models, knowing your users. There's also a success rate of 9% when people build products according to the company's internal thinking. That's super interesting. Company's internal thinking is another word for probably a bit of guesswork. Yeah. So thank you very much for your time. I have really enjoyed taking you through this. And I think to conclude, I'd say let us focus on building a user-focused culture within our organizations and make sure that everyone is able to understand the importance of putting the user at the center of all the decision making. I think it's also important to say that let's also ensure that research is not an afterthought, that it's a continuous process during the design and the development phase of anything that you're trying to build. And again, always remember that the most important things in research are empathy and listening to what your customers or what your users are actually saying, be it negative, be it positive. Positive helps you continue keeping that positivity. Negative helps you improve. And I hope that the examples that we've been able to explore today serve as an inspiration for you to embrace UX research and be able to preach this gospel of knowing your users even better. So I'd like to open the floor to any questions, if any. Okay. So again, thank you so much for joining this session. If you have more questions or want to continue the conversation, please connect with us at Marathon. And I'd like to end this session actually with a challenge. And that challenge is, let's purpose to build products and services so good that our users cannot ignore them at their point of need. I'll repeat again, let's purpose to build products and services so good that our users cannot ignore them at their point of need. Thank you so much and take care. Bye.
Run, get with the flow, feeling the rhythm that bounce your mommy. Watch a kulala, changamka kiasi, haya basi. Up and away we go, from the bottom we rise. Look at the light in my eyes, see it, believe it, I see no lie.